This Friday, thousands of supporters who have gathered for Gay Pride will line up along Christopher Street in Greenwich Village. They'll be there for the 11th annual Trans Day of Action in New York City to bring recognition to the transgender community and the issues they face in society.
That's right, and today we're going to learn about some of those issues and the actions being taken from two local organizations which have been on the ground advocating and providing support services for the community. Joining us are Tasha Mezqua. She's the coordinator of the Safe Outside the System, or SOS, which is part of the Audre Lorde Project. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we also want to welcome from SAS, that would be Streetwise and Safe, campaign staffer Bilal. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely.
Welcome. All right. So guys, if you may, tell us briefly about your roles, your organizations, the work that you do.
Sure. I'm with the Audre Lorde Project. We've been around for 18 years. We are an LGBT STG&C, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, transgender, and gender nonconforming people of color community organizing center. We are located out of Chelsea. We have two offices, one in Chelsea at the Miss Major J. Toole building on 147 West 24th Street, and then one here in Fort Greene, actually, 85 South Oxford Street, and that's where Safe Outside the System meets every Tuesday at 6:30. And what Safe Outside the System Collective does is we build strategies for safety that don't rely on the state for our own safety, for our wellness, for our resilience, for our resistance.
Very cool.
Can you take it back a little bit and tell us about Audre Lorde?
Yeah, Audre Lorde was born in 1934. She would have been 86 this year. We throw a birthday party for her every year in February, February 18th or so. February 18th is actually her birthday. Audre Lorde was a Black radical feminist, lesbian, poet, activist. She talked a lot about intersectionality before it was cool. Yeah, she's an amazing woman. One of my favorite quotes from her is, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less important whether I'm afraid. And I think that's so important for specifically LGBTQ people of color who often feel silenced, isolated, and marginalized, to remember, like, we're here, all we've got is each other, and we've got to fight even when it's hard.
Well, you've got a friend in the fight over here.
Mm-hmm.
Bilal, tell us about the organization that you work with and how you guys got together doing some of this overlapping work.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bilal. I work at Streetwise and Safe, and I'm happy to share space with ALP. We work in the same building on 24th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue.
Right.
Streetwise and Safe is a multi-strategy initiative that challenges the criminalization of LGBTQ youth of color. And we do that through social media, we do that through policy advocacy, community education, and changing narratives, but more importantly, creating tools and building power and resiliency of young people who have to deal with state violence every day. A lot of our organization's work involves Know Your Rights trainings across all 5 boroughs. So as you know, probably like last year or the year before last, the NYPD had to reach its 5 million stop and frisk. And the narrative is so often about people who look like me, who identify as kind of masculine male, Black men moving through the space. But so often, policing takes on a gender and sexually specific effect, and it has a real impact on our community. And so what we really want to do is build power for folks who have experienced police encounters every day. So we do that through teaching people their rights during their police encounters, which includes rights, realities, and responsibilities. We have a 15-week leadership program where folks who have been court involved join our program, and then they literally learn about the criminal injustice system, the criminal justice map. They go through media trainings, and then they go out into community and do things like cop watch and teach people their rights during police encounters to reduce the harms. Because sometimes we know that we push for policy, but oftentimes we know that policy isn't always effective or isn't always enforced or monitored or implemented. So we believe that if we enforce it ourselves by teaching each other our rights to keep each other safe, that we can reduce the harms of police and state violence against LGBT communities, specifically women and transgender communities and gender nonconforming folks as well.
You've got it down, Bilal.
Wow.
Like, so look, you guys are like the Reese's peanut butter cup of rights here, because it's like two great things going great together. You're teaching people to be safe outside the system and not look to the police. Like we can be the change agents in our own community, right, without having a government-sanctioned response or policing. So I just wondered, with all of the like increased visibility of like the Black Lives Matter movement and looking at this next generation that's really developing their own consciousness using social media and using their bodies, how that's translated to the mainly or mostly absent face of LGBTQ people in the struggle. I know there's been a lot of criticism that women haven't even been put to the front as much as they should be for the amount of discrimination that they face. So what about giving voice to the LGBT community in the midst of all that? Has it made your job easier or harder?
Well, I think at least for us at the Safe Outside the System Collective, we've been a part of that movement, fighting gentrification, fighting police violence, and state violence for about 10 years now. The Safe Outside the System, we have a campaign called the Safe Neighborhood Campaign. And what we do is we teach and build de-escalation strategies for safety. So we recruit small businesses, mom and pop shops, small organizations like churches, schools, mosques throughout central Brooklyn, so specifically Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, and Crown Heights. And we teach or build strategies with the staff and owners of those spaces to build stronger communities and to make a commitment that if someone is experiencing crisis or trauma and comes into this space, that that the people who work there will make a commitment to support them, to de-escalate the situation, and to not call the police.
I've seen the stickers. You can see it going by knowing it's a safe space. So then where's your hashtag? Like Black Lives Matter, what's the conscious call or a call to action for folks in the LGBT community?
Some of the hashtags that have come up and some of the actions that have popped off in the past couple of months have been not only Black Lives Matter, but Black Trans Lives Matter, and Say Her Name. Last month, and including, I believe, this weekend in Baltimore, where I'm originally from, folks have been trying to actually bring up those names again, like Rakir Boyd or Chantal Davis, and also not only women who have faced violence from the system, but also the leadership of women. So, example, for the organization that I work in, the leadership is mostly women of color. And my analysis is that from Stonewall to Stop and Frisk is that young, trans, gender nonconforming people who often may be considered street involved have been at the forefront of this movement, kind of creating strategies and being resilient. I like to, one of my favorite quotes from Audre Lorde, I can't remember right now, but she says something to the tune of, within the lesbian communities, I am Black, and with Black communities, I'm lesbian. So whenever, honestly, for me, and SAS was out there in the aftermath of the Eric Garner protests, we were out there in the aftermath of the Freddie Gray protests, and amongst many of those people, they may not publicly identify as LGBTQ, but amongst the people in the audience, there are so many people who are LGBTQ who just may not identify as LGBTQ that day.
Circles.
Yeah, it's very intersectional because violence has it's actually affected all types of community. So we have used you know, it's a blessing and a curse that this happened, but this is a great opportunity to build leadership, given what's happening with Black Lives Matter right now and given the endemic violence against Black bodies and Black and brown bodies across the nation right now.
Here in New York City specifically, are you seeing the violence related to homophobia and transphobia go up? Are those stats going up or down? I mean, I feel like there's so much awareness and talk and things I hope are getting better, but how are you actually seeing that on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, in the media you will hear that there have been a lot of changes around community policing and neighborhood policing, but often the truth of the matter is that if we do things like 1,300 more cops or if we add more police officers, that it's actually unsafe for people. So in addition to kind of antagonism happening just between community members, we know that every summer, and we hear this every summer because we do Know Your Rights training specifically in the summertime during Pride, and we have done a lot of Pride outreach. We hear from our constituents and our community that there has been no relief from Stop and Frisk, there has been no relief from strip searches to determine gender, and that people are still being profiled based on their sexual identity and their gender expression, even though there was a profiling bill passed 2 years ago in the City Council.
Yeah, thanks, Bilal. ALP doesn't actually march in the Manhattan Pride March. We do Cop Watch after the Pride March with Fierce and with Streetwise and Safe. We do that because we know that historically cops have targeted our communities, and also that there's this myth that New York City is a safe place for LGBTQ people. In the 2013 National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs report, nationally, violence against homophobic and transphobic violence went down, but in New York City, homophobic and transphobic violence went up. So we need to know like that these are the realities of our communities. The 2014 NCAVP hate violence report was released this June, and we found out that incidents across the country has gone down. So reporting has gone down, and maybe experiences of violence have gone down, but murders have gone up. So murders have gone up about, I think, 11 to 15%. I can't remember exactly. But so that says that severity of violence increases even if incidence decreases, right? So these are the conditions under which and through which we are currently organizing. And with the implementation of these new, or like the 1,300 new cops in the village after Pride, or in highly impacted communities like Central Brooklyn, have never worked to keep our people safe. It's institutionalized our folks, incarcerated our folks, disappeared our folks. Stonewall was a police riot, and the first person who threw a shot glass at the police was Marsha P. Johnson, a transgender femme black woman who was often homeless and institutionalized. So we need to know our histories.
Mm-hmm. So looking at that, the numbers that are clearly not lying, and that's even just for stuff that's reported, not even the things that happen and you just keep walking. But what are the broader issues in the community that you guys are hearing from? I'm sure like there's a definite and distinct stream with policing and that stuff in the system, but what are the other concerns of the community that have been coming to the fore a little bit?
Gentrification is a really big one, at least for us organizing out of Central Brooklyn. Many of our members are displaced. We've had to rework our campaign because so have our small businesses. Our Black-owned mom and pop shops are being displaced by more and more Starbucks, Connecticut Muffin. These places are popping up all over the place and disintegrating or pulling apart and displacing our communities. So it's hard to talk about things like marriage or Caitlyn Jenner when we are trying to make sure that basic needs are met, that folks are still connected to community, pulled out of isolation, have a place or a bed and a shelter.
For us, it looks like street safety. Folks are still being attacked on the streets, and like you said, it's also, in addition to issues like marriage equality or policing, SAS just released a report called Surviving the Streets with the Urban Institute, and we interviewed people across New York City, LGBT folks, and they were just finding out that they don't have access to things like basic housing or food or education. So these issues are still affecting our communities. One of the issues that we're working on right now that also seems to particularly target the LGBT community are searches by police officers. So we know that generally LGBT folks have less access to their bodies, or that folks have a lot of access to LGBTQ bodies through searches. And so right now folks are still being searched to determine their gender, and we're still hearing complaints about that, and that police officers are still using condoms as evidence of prostitution in the epicenter of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. So for us, it's safety that we're not able to like walk down the street without a condom without being harassed by other people or law enforcement officers.
Well, some strategies. It's all right here in some of the literature that you guys have brought by, that it really is a practical guide about what to do if you are confronted by the police or some authority to help you avoid some of the pitfalls that could easily happen. So where would someone pick up a copy of this little guy?
Thank you for talking about the Serve tool. It looks really good in that lighting right now. I didn't know that the color was that well.
I had one eye on it while you guys are speaking, but it really is like it's practical, and the folks from the Center for Urban Pedagogy helped out with this. They're phenomenal. They've been here before. They really break it down into everyday practical sort of like not.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, this was definitely
stuff.
created for a community because we know oftentimes materials aren't accessible or aren't created with us in mind. And so tonight we will be releasing the Serve tool at the SAS offices at 147 West 24th Street. And within this nice, neat handing tool right here, you'll find out about your rights during searches, your rights when you're interacting with police, and just your rights in police custody. As we know, the system is systeming right now, and mass incarceration is up, as well as street encounters and stop and frisk. They are not down. And so we really wanted to create tools for our own community during this time of violence.
And you can use it
for
even
everybody.
if you're not gay.
Yeah.
There's some useful things in there. Not that there's anything wrong with it if you're hetero, but you were going to go there, Melody.
Guys, tell us about the Trans Day of Action. Tell us about Friday.
Trans Day of Action. It's going to be the 11th annual. Oh, beautiful flyers right there. It goes, actually, it's not from 2 to 5. I think that's last year's flyer, but it's from 4 to 6. And
Okay.
so we have a rally so folks are gathering at 4 p.m. We have a rally from 4:30 to 5, and we have a quick march. It's about 1.2 miles that goes through the West Village and passes in front of Stonewall and the Monster Bar, where trans women have experienced, or trans and gender nonconforming women and other people have experienced violence recently. So it'll pass in front of those 2 bars, and then we'll go back to the pier. It gathers at Pier 45, Christopher Street Pier. And we are expecting about 2,000 people. It's a way to show solidarity for and with the movement work and organizing work that transgendered people of color have been doing at the Audre Lorde Project through the Trans Justice Program. And Trans Justice meets every Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the ALP offices on 147 West 24th Street.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you guys so much for being
Perfect.
here.
Thank
We'll
you
look
for
forward
having
to
us.
seeing
Thank
you
you so much.
Friday.
Yes,
Thanks for the work you do.
thank you.
Thank you.